The forest screamed danger. Trees moaned like they were in pain. Shadows moved on their own. Every sound warned of death waiting to happen. Huddled under a fallen tree root was a small alien girl. Her skin was light purple, her clothes torn to shreds, and her skinny arms and legs covered in cuts and dirt. She was completely alone and scared to death. Her name was Lyra, only 7 cycles old, way too young to be stuck in this nightmare. She had no food, no map, and no tools. All she had was a thin metal band that around her wrist that used to track her. Now it just blinked red, almost dead like her hopes. Lyra sat up, her whole body aching. The trees above blocked the sunlight. Strange vines hung down that seemed to watch her. Something breathed heavily deeper in the forest, something big and hungry. She remembered the crash and flashes, their ship hitting the ground, fire everywhere, people screaming, everyone running. She tried to follow the adults, but in the panic, they forgot about the little purple girl. Her mother had pushed her into an escape pod, promising to find her. That promise died with the flames she saw consume their main ship from her pod's window before it crashed. "Don't cry," she whispered to herself. "Mom said be brave." But brave felt impossible right now. Hours passed slowly. She walked when she could, tripped over roots, got back up. Then she heard it, a sound that wasn't natural. It sounded like metal dying mixed with an angry roar. The noise shook the trees so hard birds flew away. Even the creepy vines pulled back. Lyra froze. She looked around and saw something huge crashing through the trees. It moved too fast and was way too big. She had to run. She turned and ran, her weak legs somehow working from pure fear. She stepped on something sharp and yelped, but kept going. The ground turned muddy and slippery. Branches hit her face and leaves tangled in her hair. She ran until she couldn't breathe, then tripped and fell face first into the dirt. As she gasped for air, she saw it through the tall grass. A monster from nightmares. It had black armor-like skin, 4 metal-looking legs, and a long head full of teeth that would scare anyone. It sniffed once, then turned its glowing yellow eyes right at her. Lyra couldn't scream. She just closed her eyes and waited to die. But death didn't come. Instead, she heard a blast and saw a bright flash through her closed eyes. The beast snarled. Another energy blast hit it, knocking it flat. Lyra opened her eyes. The monster wasn't moving, and standing over it was a human. He was tall, wearing beat-up black armor and heavy boots. Smoke rose from the gun in his hand. He looked around carefully, then saw her. Lyra tried to crawl away, but her hurt leg and complete exhaustion made that impossible. The human knelt beside her. Lyra shivered as she looked at his strange round face. Unlike her people, his eyes didn't glow and his skin wasn't colorful. He had tired lines on his face but didn't look mean. He said something she couldn't understand. His voice deep but not scary. He reached for her, and Lyra flinched. The human stopped, then put his weapon on the ground. He raised both hands, palms out, the universal "I come in peace" gesture. Lyra stared, then gave a tiny nod. He picked her up gently. She expected pain, expected his hands to be cold, but they were warm and careful. As they moved through the dangerous forest, Lyra heard other monsters screaming far away, but none came close. The human carried her like she was precious, and for the first time since the crash, she felt something new. Hope. She had no idea who this strange alien was or where he came from, but one thing was clear. This forest wanted to kill her, and now she wasn't alone anymore. "You know," the human said as he stepped over a fallen tree, "when I woke up today, adopt an alien child wasn't on my to-do list." Lyra just blinked at him, not understanding the words but hearing the friendly tone. She tilted her head. "Yeah, you don't understand me," he continued with a small smile. "I've been talking to myself for weeks on this death planet. Nice to have an audience, even if you don't get the jokes." He adjusted his hold on her. "Name's Torin, by the way. Sergeant Torin Vale, Interstellar Communications Corps. Currently lost, slightly hungry, and apparently now responsible for a purple kid." Lyra watched his face as he talked. Though she couldn't understand his words, his voice was comforting. It reminded her of her father, who always talked when he was nervous. "You're lucky I found you," Torin continued. 3 weeks ago, I would have been useless. But after fighting off those things daily, I've gotten pretty good at monster zapping. He pointed to a scar on his cheek. Got this on day 2. Learned pretty quick they don't like it when you try to study them up close. Science was never my strong suit anyway. Lyra woke up feeling warm. Not hot sun warm, but nice campfire warm. She opened her eyes and saw stars through the trees above. She was wrapped in a thick blanket that smelled like smoke and metal. She sat up quickly, heart racing, until she saw him, the human, sitting with his back to her, looking into a small fire. His armor lay on the ground all scratched up. Steam rose from his hands as he washed them with water. His gun was against a rock, always ready. He hadn't left her. Lyra pulled the blanket tighter and noticed her leg was bandaged and didn't hurt anymore. The human turned and saw she was awake. He raised one hand slowly, palm open. Lyra didn't move. He smiled a little, then reached into a pocket and pulled out a small package. He opened it and placed what looked like food on a flat rock near her, then backed away. Lyra stared at the food. Her stomach growled loudly. She hadn't eaten in days. Carefully, she crawled forward and took the food. It tasted weird, smoky and salty, but it was wonderful. Tears filled her eyes, which she quickly wiped away, hoping he wouldn't notice. He did notice, but pretended not to. He just went back to stirring something in a small pot over the fire. After a long silence, Lyra whispered, "Lyra." The human turned. She touched her chest and repeated, "Lyra." He nodded once, then touched his own chest. "Torin." She tried to say it. "To when?" His smile grew. "Close enough." "Well, Lyra," Torin said while stirring the pot, "you're the first purple person I've met. I like your color. Very royal looking." Lyra didn't understand the words, but his friendly tone made her smile a little. Suddenly, the forest around them shifted. Low growls echoed from the trees. Lyra tensed. Torin stood smoothly, grabbing his weapon. He didn't panic or shout. He just moved like someone who'd done this before. Lyra edged closer to the fire, her small hands shaking. "Shadow claws," she whispered in her language. Torin didn't answer, already moving silently. Then came the smell, sharp and disgusting, like burning oil mixed with rotten meat. Lyra covered her nose. One of the creatures was near. She saw it before Torin did, tall with thin arms and skin like black bone, its red eyes searching as it moved between trees without making a sound. Lyra gasped. The creature turned toward her. Then, boom! Torin fired once. The creature's head snapped back, and it fell without a sound. Lyra stared at the dead monster as its smell got even worse. Torin checked it was really dead, spat in disgust, then dragged it far into the trees. When he returned, Lyra was hugging her knees, still shaking. He sat beside her in silence, gave her another packet of food, and then said a soft word she didn't understand. The way he said it felt comforting, though. She nodded. Later that night, as the fire burned lower, Lyra stayed close to him. She pointed to where the dead monster was and whispered, "You smell like fire." He blinked in surprise, then let out a short, rough laugh, the first she'd heard from him. She pointed at his chest again. "Torin Firebringer." He raised an eyebrow and gave her a look that clearly said, "Really?" She smiled a little, and he rolled his eyes playfully. "Great," he muttered. "My first alien encounter, and I get nicknamed for my body odor. Just my luck." That night, Lyra fell asleep leaning against his arm. The forest still made scary noises. The shadows still moved, but she didn't dream about dying anymore. The man who smelled like fire had become her protector in this nightmare place. The next morning, Torin tried to teach Lyra some basic words by drawing pictures in the dirt. He drew a simple human figure and pointed to himself. Human. Then he drew a question mark next to a blank space. "Vexani," she said, touching her chest. Then she took the stick and tried to draw her people, taller than humans, with pointed ears and patterns on their skin. "Vexani," he repeated. "And where are you from?" He pointed up at the sky. She understood and drew a circle with rings around it. "Neridium." "Got it," Torin nodded. "You're a Vexani from Neridium." He tapped her wristband. "What's this for?" Lyra looked at it, then drew herself with lines coming from her hands, then the band with a circle around it, making stopping motions. Torin frowned. "It stops something? Blocks something from your hands?" She nodded but didn't seem to know how to explain more. Well, that's interesting, Torrin said. Maybe it's like a child lock. Do all Vexani kids wear these? Lyra shook her head and held up two fingers. Just two of you had them? You and who else? Lyra's face fell. She drew a smaller Vexani figure, then crossed it out. Oh, Torrin said softly. I'm sorry. They spent the morning gathering supplies. Torrin showed Lyra which plants were safe and which to avoid. He cut open a fat, spiky plant and showed her how to drink the water inside. She was a quick learner, and by midday, she was helping collect tiny blue star-shaped berries. These aren't bad, Torrin said, trying one. Kind of like blueberries, but spicier. Lyra watched him eat one, then carefully tried one herself. Her eyes widened. She made a face that made Torrin laugh. Too spicy? He asked. She stuck out her tongue and fanned it dramatically, making him laugh harder. Drama queen, he said, still chuckling. Here, drink some water. He handed her his canteen. As they worked, Torrin tried to teach her simple words. Water, he said, pointing to his canteen. Food, he said, holding up the berries. Tree, pointing up. Sky. Lyra repeated each word, her pronunciation getting better with each try. She was smart. He had to give her that. You know, he said as they walked back to camp, for someone stranded on a death planet, you're pretty good company, kid. That evening, as they sat by a new campfire in a different clearing, Torrin showed Lyra his few personal items that survived the crash. A metal badge with his unit symbol, a pocket knife with multiple tools, and a small holographic projector. He activated the projector, and a tiny image appeared, a young human girl with long hair and Torrin's eyes. My daughter, he said quietly. Elise. Lyra looked at the image, then at Torrin's sad face. She understood without words. She reached out and touched his hand gently. He switched off the projector. She got sick. Nothing the doctors could do. He tucked the device away. That was 2 years ago. I joined this mission to, I don't know, get away, I guess. Lyra didn't understand his words, but she recognized grief. She had seen it in her people's faces when someone didn't return from an expedition. She took one of the blue berries they'd collected and offered it to him. Torrin smiled faintly. Thanks, kid. Suddenly, Lyra's wristband beeped, a sound it hadn't made since before the crash. They both stared at it in surprise. The light had changed from red to a faint blue pulse. That's new, Torrin said, leaning closer to examine it. Lyra looked just as confused as he was. The band had never done this before. Before they could investigate further, the ground trembled beneath them. Not just a small shake, but a violent jolt that nearly knocked them over. Earthquake? Torrin grabbed his weapon and looked around. Lyra shook her head. She pointed to the ground and made a crawling motion with her fingers. Something's moving down there? Torrin's eyes widened. Oh, that's not good. They didn't have to wait long to find out what it was. The earth erupted 20 meters away as something massive burst from below. It was like the creatures they'd encountered before, but enormous. Easily 3 times larger, with multiple limbs and what looked like bony plates covering its body. Mother of... Torrin snatched up Lyra and ran. The giant beast roared, a sound so powerful it shook leaves from the trees. It began to pursue them, moving with shocking speed for something so large, tunneling just beneath the surface and then bursting up again. It's tracking our vibrations, Torrin shouted as they fled. We need to get somewhere rocky. Lyra pointed urgently to the right, toward what looked like a rocky outcropping in the distance. Good eye! Torrin changed direction. They raced toward the rocks, the massive creature surfacing behind them again and again, each time getting closer. Lyra's wristband pulsed brighter as her fear grew. Almost there, Torrin gasped, his legs burning with exertion. Just as they reached the edge of the rocky area, the creature lunged forward, a massive claw catching Torrin's leg. He stumbled, nearly dropping Lyra. In that moment of terror, Lyra's wristband flashed brilliantly, and a burst of blue energy shot out, striking the monster's claw. The creature screeched and recoiled. Torrin stared at Lyra in shock but didn't waste time asking questions. He scrambled onto the rocks, carrying her to safety as the massive beast circled the rocky area, unable or unwilling to follow. What was that? Torrin finally asked when they were safe, pointing at her wrist. Lyra looked at the band, which was still glowing faintly blue. She shook her head, just as confused as he was. You've got some tricks up your sleeve, huh? Torrin said, catching his breath. Remind me to stay on your good side. He examined her wristband more carefully now. So that's what it's for. It's not just a tracker. He looked at her with new understanding. It's a power dampener, isn't it? You're some kind of, I don't know, energy wielder? Lyra didn't fully understand his words, but she stared at her wrist with a mixture of fear and wonder. She had always known she was different. Her mother had told her she was special, that the band was to keep her safe until she was old enough to control what was inside her. But she'd never seen it do that before. Can you do it again? Torrin asked, pointing to her hand. The blue zappy thing? Lyra frowned in concentration, holding out her hand. Nothing happened. Torrin said. Maybe it only works when you're scared or in danger. He looked out at the creature still circling the rocks. Well, we've got plenty of that to go around. They spent the night on the rocky outcrop, huddled together for warmth. In the morning, they carefully made their way back toward the forest, keeping watch for the burrowing monster. We need to find better shelter, Torrin said, though he knew Lyra couldn't understand him fully. Somewhere those things can't dig or climb. He pointed up to indicate height, then made dig-empty motions and shook his head. Lyra seemed to understand. She pointed to distant hills visible above the tree line. Good thinking, Torrin nodded. Higher ground. They traveled all winter, moving carefully, stopping often to listen for creatures. Torrin showed Lyra how to walk quietly, placing her feet as he did. She was a fast learner. At one point, they came across a strange plant with large purple fruits. Torrin was about to touch one when Lyra grabbed his hand, shaking her head vigorously. She mimed eating, then clutched her throat and fell over dramatically. Torrin laughed. Poisonous, got it. Thanks for the warning. You're saving my life already. In return, he showed her how to find water trapped in certain leaves after the rain. He demonstrated by tipping one leaf, letting clean water pour into his mouth. Lyra tried it too, smiling at this simple discovery. By late afternoon, they reached a steeper part of the forest. The trees thinned out and rocky outcroppings became more common. They climbed higher, Torrin helping Lyra over the difficult parts. Almost there, he encouraged, pointing to a ledge about 10 meters up. That looks like a good spot to rest. Just as they were nearing the ledge, a shadow passed overhead. They both looked up to see a flying creature circling, something with leathery wings and a long pointed head. Great, Torrin muttered. They fly too. He pulled Lyra close to the rock face, trying to stay out of sight. The flying beast circled lower, clearly having spotted them. Keep climbing, Torrin urged, helping Lyra up. Almost there. The creature dove toward them. Torrin raised his weapon and fired, but missed as the beast swerved. It circled back, screeching. Go! Torrin pushed Lyra toward a small cave opening in the rock face. She scrambled inside while he turned to face the flying monster. It dove again. Torrin fired and hit one wing. The creature spiraled but didn't fall. Instead, it landed on the ledge, blocking their escape route. It was smaller than the ground monsters, but still dangerous, with razor-sharp teeth and claws. Torrin backed toward the cave, keeping his weapon aimed at the beast. It advanced slowly, hissing. When he was at the cave entrance, he realized with horror that his weapon's charge indicator was blinking red, nearly empty. The creature sensed his hesitation and lunged. Torrin fired his last shot, hitting it in the shoulder. The beast stumbled, but kept coming. He drew his knife, preparing for a close fight. Suddenly, Lyra pushed past him, her wristband glowing bright blue. She thrust her hand forward, and a beam of energy shot out, hitting the creature square in the chest. It flew backward off the ledge, screeching as it fell. Torrin stared at her in amazement. You did it again! You controlled it this time! Lyra looked at her hand, then at him, a small smile forming on her face. She'd done it on purpose this time. You're full of surprises, Purple Kid, Torrin said, ruffling her hair. Come on, let's check out this cave before something else tries to eat us. The cave was small but dry, with a narrow entrance that would be easy to defend. Torrin found some dry wood and started a small fire. As night fell, they sat together at the cave mouth, watching the stars appear. You know, Torrin said, where I come from, kids your age are worried about school and video games, not fighting off monsters. He glanced at her. You're pretty brave. Lyra didn't understand all his words, but she recognized the praise in his voice. She smiled, then pointed to her wristband, which was still glowing faintly blue. Yeah, that's something special, Torrin agreed. I've never seen technology like that. Or maybe it's not technology at all. Maybe it's you? He made a motion like energy coming from his hands, then pointed to her questioningly. Lyra nodded slowly. She held up her hands and wiggled her fingers, then pointed to the band and made a locking motion. It holds it in, Torrin said, understanding. Until you need it. Smart design. He looked at her more carefully. Is that why your people were on that ship? To protect you? Lyra's face fell. She nodded sadly. Hey, Torrin said gently, putting his arm around her. We're going to be okay. We'll figure this out together. He didn't know if she understood his words, but she leaned against him, taking comfort in his presence. Together they watched the night sky, both wondering if anyone was looking for them, near them. The sky turned black without warning the next day. No stars, no moon, just dark clouds above the forest. The clouds were thick like smoke. Lightning flashed in the distance, and wind howled through the branches. Lyra woke up startled. Torrin was already on his feet, packing their few belongings quickly. Storm, he said, his voice low. She didn't understand the word, but she could tell something bad was coming. The ground rumbled. Cold air rushed past them. Far away, something screamed. Not the usual monster sounds, but something deeper and bigger. Lyra stood up, clutching her blanket. Torrin knelt down without a word and picked her up. She didn't resist, wrapping her arms around his neck and holding tight. They moved quickly, leaving their small cave. The wind was getting stronger, making it hard to see. Every step made noise, rocks rolling, twigs snapping, leaves whipping past. Lyra buried her face against Torrin's chest. His heartbeat was steady and strong, not racing in panic. Lightning flashed, illuminating the forest below. Lyra saw shadows moving between trees, more than one following them, watching. Shadow claws, she whispered urgently. Torrin didn't speak but gripped his weapon tighter and walked faster. The wind pushed against them now. Rain began to fall, cold and sharp like tiny needles. Lyra shivered. Torrin pulled her blanket over her head. Then he stopped. In front of them was a huge crack in a cliff face, a deeper, larger cave than the one they'd left. Torrin looked inside, dark but dry, good enough. He stepped in, placed Lyra down, and lit a small light from his belt. Then he crouched by the entrance, watching and listening. Lyra pulled the blanket tighter, her legs still hurt. She looked at him, so tall and still, like a wall between her and danger. Why? She whispered. He turned his head. Why help me? She asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Then, in his deep voice, he said one word, alone. Lyra didn't understand the word, but somehow she felt what it meant. She crawled closer. Were you left too? He looked away and didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence told her everything. A loud snap outside made Lyra jump. Torrin was instantly on his feet, turning off the light, raising his weapon, holding his breath. Something sniffed near the opening, a clicking sound, then wet breathing. Lyra froze, not daring to move. Then silence. Torrin took a step forward, but the sound returned, louder, closer, and then crash! A huge claw smashed through the rock just inches from Lyra's head. She screamed. Torrin fired twice. Light flashed. The monster shrieked. The cave shook. Lyra fell backward. Torrin caught her with one arm and pulled her close. Outside, the creature attacked again, breaking more rock. Its face appeared in the hole. Long mouth, knife-like teeth, wet stone skin. Lyra couldn't breathe. Torrin aimed his weapon. Click. Empty. The monster lunged. Lyra screamed. But as the beast was about to reach her, she raised her hand by instinct. The mark on her wrist glowed, and a bright wave of blue light exploded from her skin. It hit the monster square in the face. The creature flew backward, crashing through several trees. Silence returned, broken only by the continuing rain. Lyra stared at her hand, shaking uncontrollably. What was that? She whispered in confusion. Torrin stared too, eyes wide. Slowly a smile formed. That, he said appreciatively, was awesome. She looked up anxiously. I didn't mean to. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You saved us. She gazed out into the trees. No movement was visible, no growls audible, just the wind and the rain. He picked her up again. Come on, he said. We move before it wakes up. She held tight, but something inside her had changed. She wasn't just trying to survive anymore. She was discovering she might be the one thing the monsters should actually fear. By the way, Torrin said as they trudged through the rain, next time you decide to unleash your secret superpowers, a little warning would be nice. I nearly had a heart attack. Lyra didn't understand his words, but his tone made her giggle despite their situation. He looked down at her with mock seriousness. Oh, you think that's funny? Nearly giving your only friend in this nightmare jungle a cardiac event? Kids these days, I swear. No respect. Her giggles grew, and Torrin found himself smiling too. Somehow laughing in the face of almost certain death made perfect sense. As they moved deeper into the cave system, Torrin's light revealed something unexpected. Signs of previous inhabitants. Scraps of fabric, broken equipment, and then the most disturbing discovery. Bones. Not just one skeleton, but several piled in corners. Some small, some large. Among them were broken helmets, armor plates, and a cracked data pad still weakly blinking in the dust. Lyra stepped back in horror. People died here! Torrin knelt beside one skeleton and brushed away dirt. Soldiers, he muttered, not locals. He picked up a rusted badge, his jaw tightening. They were human. Great, he added under his breath. I found the missing survey team. 3 years too late to do them any good. Lyra swallowed hard, her voice shaking. What happened to them? Torrin stood up. They tried to hide, like us. He didn't say more, but moved deeper into the cave, checking everything. It was safe enough for now. He returned to Lyra and started setting up camp. No fire this time, just heat packs and a soft mat. She sat down slowly, eyes still on the bones. Torrin noticed and walked over, placing his hand on her shoulder. They didn't have what we have, he said quietly. Lyra looked up. What's that? You, he said simply. She blinked in confusion. I'm small, she whispered. I'm not strong. He crouched beside her. You just blasted a monster 20 feet through solid trees with light from your wrist. I've never seen anyone do that. I didn't try to do it. It just happened. Torrin nodded. Sometimes the strongest power shows up when we're scared, when we need to protect someone. Lyra thought about this, then asked, do you think they were protecting someone? He looked at the bones again. Maybe, or maybe they were just trying to survive. She leaned against him, tired. Do you think we'll survive? Torrin looked toward the cave entrance where the storm still raged, then back at her. Yes, she closed her eyes. Because of me? He shook his head. No, because of us. While Lyra slept, Torrin examined the data pad he'd found among the skeletons. Most of the files were corrupted, but a few fragments remained intact. He scrolled through them, his face growing more serious with each passing minute. Project Lumina, he read quietly. Subject exhibits unprecedented energy manipulation capabilities. Genetic markers consistent with the ancient Vixani bloodline. He looked over at Lyra's sleeping form, then back at the pad. The bracelet serves as both inhibitor and amplifier. Without proper training, the child could pose significant danger to herself and others. Torrin set the pad down, troubled by what he'd read. The missing survey team hadn't crashed here by accident. They'd been searching for something, or someone, like Lyra. What are you, kid? He whispered. And why is everyone so interested in you? He tried accessing more files, but most were damaged beyond recovery. One video fragment played briefly, a human scientist speaking urgently. The Vexani children are the key. Their genetic mutation allows them to channel the energy that surrounds all living things. The bracelets help them control it until they mature. We need to find them before the harvesters do. If those creatures absorb that kind of power. The video cut off there. Torrin looked at the sleeping child with new understanding. No wonder her people were desperate to evacuate her. She wasn't just special. She was valuable and dangerous. Harvesters, Torrin muttered, looking at the cave entrance. Is that what those things are? They're not just hunting. They're harvesting power. He searched through more files, finding a partial scan of one of the creatures. Notes beside it read, biomechanical composition, neural network indicates collective consciousness. Energy signatures show absorption capabilities, primarily attracted to high-energy sources. That's why they keep coming after us, Torrin realized. They're not just hunting any prey, they're hunting her specifically. They can sense her power. He looked at Lyra with newfound concern. If these creatures could somehow absorb her abilities, they'd become unstoppable. He had to get her off this planet, not just for her sake, but for everyone's. Later that night, Lyra woke to a strange sound, soft, wet. She sat up and looked around. Torrin was still at the entrance, weapon ready, but something else was there, a strange light flickering at the back of the cave. Lyra stood carefully and walked toward it, passing broken crates, torn bag, and more bones. Then she saw it, a symbol carved into the stone, glowing with a faint blue light exactly like her wrist marking. Her eyes widened in wonder. She reached toward it. The moment her fingers touched the symbol, the mark on her wrist lit up brightly. Torrin turned quickly. Lyra! She stepped back. I didn't mean to, but the symbol kept glowing. A circle formed, and a pulse moved through the cave. Suddenly, the datapad near the bones blinked faster. Torrin grabbed it. The screen showed old files and broken messages, but one played through static. If you find this, the child is the key. The light is not a curse, it's our only hope. She stared at the message in confusion. I'm not cursed, she whispered. Torrin nodded. You're the answer. The datapad continued playing fragments. The Vexani have hidden their gifted children for generations, fearing their power would be weaponized. The bracelets contain their abilities until they're seen. Your people were protecting you, Torrin said softly. That's why you were on that ship. They were evacuating you somewhere safe. Lyra looked at her wrist, beginning to understand. Her bracelet wasn't just a tracker, it was something more. Behind them, the storm outside grew louder. The trees screamed as something big approached. But inside the cave, for the first time, Lyra didn't feel like a mistake. She felt like something important waiting to happen. So, Torrin said, examining the datapad more closely, apparently you're some kind of chosen one. That's convenient. He glanced at her with a half smile. No pressure or anything. Lyra tilted her head, not understanding his words, but sensing his lighter mood. He sighed dramatically. First day as a babysitter, and I get the kid with cosmic powers. This is definitely not covered in the standard military handbook. The storm ended, but silence hadn't returned. The forest outside the cave was too quiet. No wind, no birds, no monster calls. It was the kind of quiet that meant something worse was coming. Torrin sat at the cave entrance, one hand gripping his weapon, the other tightening the strap on his shoulder armor. His eyes scanned the trees without blinking. Lyra sat deeper in the cave, watching him. Her mark still glowed faint blue. It hadn't stopped since she touched the wall. Are they coming? She asked in a whisper. Torrin nodded slowly. Yes. He didn't smile, didn't lie. She liked that about him. Even when the truth was scary, it was still the truth. Then they heard it, a distant thump like a metal drum. Then another. Then closer. Thump, thump, thump. Lyra grabbed her blanket and crawled next to Torrin. He looked down at her. Stay behind me. She nodded, but her small hands clenched into fists. The first monster stepped into the clearing. It was bigger than the others. Thicker legs, armor plates on its chest, black horns curling from its head, and a mouth full of too many teeth. Behind it came two more, smaller, faster, with red eyes glowing. All three moved straight toward the cave. Torrin stood, his gun humming with power. Lyra stood too, her voice quiet but determined. I don't want to run. You won't, he said. I don't want to hide anymore. He turned to her, and for the first time, he didn't treat her like a child who needed protection. He nodded. Then stand with me. The first blast came from Torrin's gun. It hit the lead creature in the chest, burning deep, but it didn't fall. It roared and charged forward. The others followed. Lyra lifted her hand. The mark on her wrist burned bright. She aimed toward the side. Her body shook, her legs felt weak, but she didn't step back. A beam of blue light exploded from her palm, wild and powerful. It hit one of the smaller beasts and threw it into a tree. The tree cracked in half. The creature didn't get up. Torin grinned. Nice shot. She wobbled slightly. He caught her arm. You okay? She nodded. The second creature leapt into the cave. Torin fired. It dodged. Its claws scraped his shoulder. He grunted in pain but didn't fall. Then Lyra yelled, releasing another blast of light that hit the ceiling. Rocks fell, pinning the creature under the rubble. The last one charged. The big one. Torin and Lyra both turned to face it, but this one was smarter. It moved fast, swatting Torin aside hard. He hit the cave wall with a sickening thud and didn't get up. Lyra screamed. The beast turned to her, its mouth opening wide. She stumbled back and fell. Her hand lit up again, but the light flickered weakly. She was too tired, too slow. The monster lunged. Bang! One last shot. Torin had fired from where he lay on the ground. The shot hit the creature right between its eyes. It dropped dead instantly. Silence, real silence, fell. Lyra crawled to him. Torin! He coughed painfully. I'm okay, he said, though clearly he wasn't. Just don't let anything hit me like that again. She laughed through her tears. I'll try. She helped him sit up. Blood ran down his arm, but he was alive. So was she, and all three monsters were dead. She looked at her glowing wrist with new understanding. I thought I'd be scared, she whispered. You were, he reminded her, but you fought anyway. They sat there surrounded by dead monsters and broken rocks, and Lyra finally realized she wasn't weak or useless. She wasn't just a girl someone left behind. She was worth saving, and she could save others too. You know, Torin said, wincing as he adjusted his position, we make a pretty good team. The human with the empty gun and the kid with the magic wrist. We should get t-shirts made. The sun rose slowly over the forest. Gold light touched the trees. Birds returned, singing again. For the first time in days, nothing was chasing them. Inside the cave, Lyra sat beside Torin. He leaned against the wall, eyes half closed, arm wrapped in cloth torn from his undershirt. His face was pale and he was breathing slower than before. The hit he took last night had hurt him worse than he admitted. Lyra stayed close, watching over him, her small hand resting on his. You should sleep, he said, his voice rough. I already did, she whispered. I can keep watch now. A small smile appeared on his face. You're bossy now, huh? She nodded seriously. You're hurt. I get to boss you. Torin laughed, but it turned into a painful cough. Lyra's smile faded with worry. Does it hurt a lot? He didn't lie. Yes. She reached into her pocket and took out one of the food cubes he'd given her earlier. I saved this, she said, offering it to him. It's yours now. He shook his head. You need it more. No, she said firmly. Friends share. Torin looked at her, surprised. Friends? She nodded. You carried me, fed me, stayed when I cried, fought monsters. Her eyes softened. No one else did. He didn't speak for a moment, then said quietly, I had a daughter once. She blinked. Where is she? He looked away. Gone. She didn't ask more. She didn't have to. She knew what gone meant in any language. She held his hand tighter. I was a soldier, Torin said softly. I came to this planet to fix a communication tower. Simple job, easy in and out. He paused. I didn't know the monsters had returned. I crashed, same as you. Only difference it is, I didn't lose everything when I hit the ground. His voice cracked. I lost it before. She rested her head against his arm. I'm sorry. Torin closed his eyes. It's not your fault. I'm still sorry, she whispered. For a while they sat in silence, not because they had nothing to say, but because sometimes silence says more than words. Later, Torin pointed to her wrist. Does it still glow? Lyra looked at it. The mark pulsed slowly, calm now, like it was breathing with her. I don't feel scared anymore, she said. I think that's why it's quiet. Torin nodded. Maybe it listens to your heart. Lyra tilted her head curiously. Do humans have marks? He chuckled. Only the invisible kind. She touched her chest. Like pain? He looked at her, surprised. Yes, he said. Exactly like that. She smiled. Then maybe I'm more human than I thought. Torin grinned. And maybe I'm more alien than I knew. They both laughed and the sound echoed off the cave walls. Now, Torin said, sitting up straighter with a wince, I don't suppose that magic wrist of yours comes with a healing function. My shoulder feels like it was used as a chew toy. Lyra looked at her wrist thoughtfully, then at his shoulder. She placed her hand gently on his injury, concentrating hard. To their mutual surprise, the blue glow spread softly from her wrist to her palm and onto his wound. Torin gasped, not in pain but in shock, as the bleeding stopped and the wound began to close. Well, he said, staring at his partially healed shoulder. That's new. Lyra looked just as surprised as he was. She pulled her hand back, examining it with wonder. Guess we're learning new tricks, Torin said, rolling his shoulder experimentally. It still hurt, but much less. You're just full of surprises, aren't you? That night, they sat at the cave entrance together. Torin held his weapon ready. Lyra leaned against his side. Above them, stars blinked through the trees. Lyra pointed up. That one's bright. Too bright to be a star, Torin said. It's a satellite. What's that? A machine made to look down and talk to other machines. She nodded. So like a sky robot? He chuckled. Yeah, exactly. A sky robot. She looked at him. Will someone come for us? Torin stared at the sky for a while. Maybe. If they don't, what will we do? He smiled. We survive. Lyra held out her pinky finger. Promise? He looked down, confused at first, then remembered the gesture. He linked his pinky with hers. Promise, Mom. She leaned against him and he didn't move away. They weren't just crash survivors anymore. Not just soldier and child. Not fire and fear. Now they were friends, and the forest would have to face both of them. You know, Torin said, watching the stars, when I was your age, I wanted to explore space. Find new worlds. Meet aliens. He glanced down at her. Didn't exactly picture it happening quite like this, though. Lyra followed his gaze to the stars, her eyes filled with wonder despite everything they'd been through. First thing when we get back to civilization, he continued, I'm getting the biggest, greasiest burger in the galaxy, with extra cheese and fries, mountain of fries. She looked at him curiously. Right, he said with a smile. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Well, Purple Kid, you're in for a treat when we get out of here. Earth food is going to blow your little alien mind. 3 days passed. The rain never returned. The forest grew quiet. Too quiet. Torin was healing faster now, thanks to Lyra's newfound ability. His right arm was almost back to normal. His face had regained its color, and he smiled more often, especially when Lyra talked. And she talked a lot these days. She told him stories about her home world, about her favorite star-shaped fruit, about her pet bug that danced when music played, about her mother's gentle hands and her father's brave heart. She never used to talk like this, but now she could because she wasn't afraid anymore. On the fourth morning, a loud crack shook the trees, not thunder, not monster claws, but something else. Engines. She ran to the cave entrance. In the distant sky, 2 ships were cutting through the clouds, long silver vessels. One of them flashed with blue lights. Those aren't human ships, Torin said, squinting at their design. They're Vexani, your people. Lyra's eyes widened with recognition and hope, but then she turned to him urgently. They're here too. He didn't ask who. He already knew. The final hunt had begun. A loud growl echoed across the forest. One beast, then another, then more. Dozens, all coming faster. Lyra stepped forward, her mark already glowing. She didn't shake this time. Torin moved beside her, weapon loaded, injury forgotten. This is it, she said. He nodded. No running, no hiding. He looked at her with respect. We finish this. The first monster leapt from the trees, huge, fangs bared, eyes locked on Lyra. Torin fired. It fell mid-jump, but more came behind it. Lyra raised both hands. Blue light burst from her fingers, not wild like before, but focused, like fire that listened to her thoughts. She pushed forward, and the wave of beasts slowed. One tried to circle around. Torin saw it, shot it, reloaded. Another came. Lyra spun, a blast hitting it in the chest. The forest shook. Trees fell, creatures screamed, But Lyra stood tall, each step forward making the ground rumble. One beast got too close. Torin pulled his knife and swung with his remaining strength. He fell to one knee, vulnerable. Lyra screamed, her power exploding again, this time forming a wall of light. The creature stopped. They backed away, eyes wide, breathing heavily. They weren't hunting now, they were afraid. The sky opened as the rescue ships landed with a deep roar. Doors open, soldiers poured out. Vexani warriors with glowing eyes and sleek armor, weapons raised, scanning the battlefield. They saw the bodies, the blood, the two figures still standing, and they froze in amazement. An older Vexani male stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Lyra. He spoke words that Torin didn't understand, but Lyra did, her eyes filled with tears. "He says I'm the last one," she whispered to Torin. "The others, they didn't make it." Torin placed a protective hand on her shoulder. The Vexani noticed the gesture and studied Torin with new interest. Lyra looked at the last beast that still stood watching them. It was tall, waiting silently for her next move. She stepped forward, her voice clear. "Go." It turned and disappeared into the forest. The battle was over. The Vexani approached cautiously, but Lyra held up a hand to stop them. She walked to Torin, helped him stand, then looked at her people. "He saved me," she said in her language. "He's coming with us." The leader hesitated, then nodded slowly. Later, as they sat inside the warm Vexani ship, medical staff treating Torin with technology he'd never seen before, Lyra leaned against him. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was calm. "They say I'm important," she told him. "The last child with the old powers. They want to take me home." Torin nodded, trying to hide his sadness. "That's good. You'll be safe there." She looked up at him. "Will you come too?" He blinked in surprise. "To your world? I don't know if they'd allow that." "I already told them you have to," she said with the firmness that had become part of her character. "You're my friend. I won't go without you." Torin laughed, wincing slightly as the medical device finished closing his wounds. "Bossy as ever, I see." "You need someone to boss you," she replied with a smile, "or you'll just find another monster planet to crash on." He couldn't argue with that logic. The Vexani leader approached them, speaking to Lyra. She replied emphatically, pointing at Torin several times. Finally, the leader turned to Torin and spoke in halting but understandable English. "You saved last of our gifted children. This debt cannot be repaid. But we try. You welcome on Neridium, if you wish." Torin looked at Lyra's hopeful face, then back at the leader. "I'd be honored." The Vexani nodded solemnly, then gestured to one of his officers, who brought forward a small metallic object. "Communication device," the leader explained, "to learn our language." Torin accepted it with surprise. "Thank you." The device hummed softly as it was placed behind his ear. Immediately, the Vexani words around him began to sound less foreign, not yet fully understandable, but no longer completely alien. "It adapts to your brain patterns," Lyra explained, her words now carrying hints of meaning to Torin. "Soon you'll understand everything." Another Vexani approached, a female with intricate patterns across her face. She bowed slightly to Lyra. "The council is eager to meet you," she said. "They've prepared the ancient training chambers." Lyra nodded, but her hand tightened around Torin's. "He comes to all my training sessions." The female looked surprised but didn't argue. "As you wish, Lumina." "Lumina?" Torin asked when the woman had left. "It's what they call children with the gift," Lyra explained. "It means light bearer." Torin smiled. "Fits you better than purple kid, I guess." As the ship accelerated toward the stars, the forest faded below, a place where monsters once ruled, but not anymore, because something stronger had walked through it. Not just human, not just Vexani, but two souls who didn't give up on each other. 6 months later, Torin stood on a balcony overlooking the gleaming spires of Neridium's capital city. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold that still took his breath away. He wore the formal robes of a guardian of the Lumina, a position created specifically for him after he'd refused all other honors. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, stepping onto the balcony beside him. She'd grown taller in these months, her powers developing under the guidance of the Vexani elders. Her wristband had been replaced with an ornate bracelet that amplified rather than suppressed her abilities. "Ready as I'll ever be," Torin replied. adjusting his ceremonial sword. Still feels strange, attending a royal ceremony when 6 months ago we were running from monsters. The council isn't royal, Lyra corrected him with a smile. Just very, very old. Could have fooled me with all these fancy robes, he tugged at his collar. And why do I need a sword? Your people don't even use them anymore. It's symbolic, Lyra explained. You're officially my protector today. I thought I already was that, Torn raised an eyebrow. Now it's just official, she grinned, taking his hand. Come on, they're waiting. As they walked through the grand halls, Vexani citizens bowed respectfully to Lyra. Many nodded to Torrin as well. The strange human who'd saved their last Lumina had become something of a legend. You know, Torrin said quietly as they approached the ceremonial chamber, I came to that planet to fix a communications tower. Simple job. Now I'm the guardian of an alien with superpowers. Do you regret it? Lyra asked, suddenly serious. Torrin looked down at her, this child who'd faced monsters without flinching, who'd saved his life multiple times, who'd given him purpose when he thought he had none left. Not for a second, he said, though I still think you owe me that burger I was promised. Lyra laughed. After the ceremony, the chefs have been practicing Earth recipes all week. Now that, Torrin grinned, is diplomacy I can get behind. Together they entered the chamber, heads held high, the soldier and the child who had found each other among the stars and forged a bond stronger than any force in the universe.